Senators. If I may, I'd like to begin by making a statement for the record. The file indicates that Ezra Kramer authorized
The President convened an emergency cabinet meeting today to discuss the growing scandal over an alleged government assassination program, codenamed Blackbriar. CIA Director Ezra Kramer is under criminal investigation for authorizing the program, which in several cases may have even targeted U.S. citizens. 2 agency officials have already been arrested. Dr. Albert Hirsch, the alleged mastermind of the Blackbriar program, and CIA Deputy Director Noah Boson, the program's operational chief. Meanwhile, mystery surrounds the fate of David Webb, also known as Jason Bourne, the source behind the exposure of the Blackbriar program. It's been reported that Webb was shot and fell from a Manhattan rooftop into the East River 10 stories below. However, after a 3-day search, Webb's body has yet to be found.
Good evening, America. Welcome once again to one of the fastest growing talk and rock shows on the internet. I am your host, Christopher Mader, and we are broadcasting here deep in the bunker behind liberal enemy territory, political rhetoric and propaganda whizzing over our heads, but we are beating them back with your recommended allowance of truth and reality. This is the Meat and Potato Show, conservative talk and awesome rock. Okay, folks, here we go, here on Northern Lights Radio Network. Once again, I'm so excited. I always love doing this show. It's just something I've been doing since 2008. It's a joy, always, from the candidate interviews, the authors, everybody who has come on as guests to the show, and this gentleman is no different tonight. Author of 5 books, theologian, Collegium of the Bible Institute. He's been posting a whole bunch of stuff on YouTube about Saul Alinsky, and we're here to talk to my good guest, Mark Shaw. We're going to talk about the President's State of the Union address tonight. Mark Shaw, thank you so much, sir, for coming on to the Meat and Potato Show twice now. Thank you so much, sir. How are you tonight?
I'm good, and thanks for having me back, Chris. I really appreciate it.
I certainly enjoyed our last interview that we had, and thank you so much again for that. One of the things, were you able to view the State of the Union address?
Yes, I was able to view it, and I also read through the transcript.
Really?
Yeah.
I was watching it. I don't have that ability to get the transcript, so I just watched it on YouTube. And I'd said to you before that, and my audience knows this, there have been things going on here in my family, and so I've actually been quite literally offline for about a week now, and so I'm a little behind the 8 ball. So we went to a Tea Party event tonight. We watched Rocky Mountain Heist, and we had a seminar and talked about that. And then we had to blow back here and watch, quite literally, spool it up on YouTube, watch the thing, and put our questionnaires together here. The very first question I want to talk to you about, it seemed like if you watched it, usually when the president goes on, Mr. Speaker, the President of the United States, there's usually a huge applause. Everyone is, they're up in arms, they're all excited about it. Then there's the second applause where, with Mr. Speaker, he bangs the gavel and he silences everybody and he says, ladies and gentlemen, and he reintroduces the president. There's another huge applause. The very first thing, Mark, I noticed about that was not only the Sergeant at Arms who introduced him, the second time that Boehner introduced him, it was lukewarm. Did you see that, sir?
Yeah, I did, and I didn't know if they were just bored and didn't want to be there, or I mean, that would have been my reason for sure. Because when this president speaks, he always uses language that's slippery. So,
Board,
it's a matter
I think
of
they're
trying
all
to
sick to their
interpret what is
stomachs.
said, and it's just it requires a whole lot of energy to do.
I think they were all sick to their stomachs, especially the military members. And not one of them ever stood up or even clapped, especially when he mentioned that Gitmo stuff.
So, one of the things I wanted to ask you also about that is he had spoken in the speech about how we're growing jobs faster since 1999, and more people are insured, and we're free from foreign oil. Now, there are certain market forces that are making that happen. How much of this is actually the government's responsibility, or are they behind this? I mean, or is this just natural market forces?
Well, yeah, I mean, you ask a good question there. When it comes to the oil, obviously, he had nothing to do with that. The government refused to open up private lands or government lands for drilling. It's the private sector and private lands that have gone through and done the drilling. They're the ones that have brought down the price of gasoline at the pump, and yet this guy likes to stand up there and make everybody think that that was something he did. We should all applaud it. Well, he didn't do anything with regard to that. He obstructs freedom. He obstructs that which Americans love, and he continues to do so. And I don't expect the next 2 years to do much for him to do much different than that.
Yeah, I heard in his speech. He did talk about American enterprise. He did talk about, unleashing American power. I guess that's a thing that, well, I've heard. I have gray hair. I've heard a lot of presidents say these State of the Union speeches all the time. But here we are again. He's talked about jobs growing faster, but yet they're growing faster because, well, here's my 2 cents. Okay, they're growing faster, but it seems like they've just absorbed, the new regulations. You and I know, Mark, that every time these congressional people get together, they just pass more regulations. They just pass more laws. And it's like business is like, okay, all right, let's absorb this and figure out how we're going to make more money next year. And okay, eventually the economy does recover. But isn't that what it is? They're just absorbing this stuff.
Well, yeah, that's the case always with business. You have the fourth branch of government, which are all these agencies that seem to be able to create law without going through Congress. They can set up a regulation. They call it something different than a law, but you try to break it and see how well that goes with you. You'll be arrested as if it were a law. And so we call that the fourth branch of government. Our founders never intended for third-party agencies of the government to have that kind of power. And I'm surprised somebody hasn't pushed that constitutionally in the court system. Maybe they have, and I haven't heard of it, but that would be a wonderful thing to push, I think. But yeah, you're right. The companies are about absorbing cost and getting their profit margin, as slim as they are usually at a certain level, and they just raise the price of their product
right.
to absorb it. And by the way, when it comes to corporations and taxes on corporations, my main reason for not taxing a corporation is because you give that corporation the right to be represented. If you don't tax that corporation, then they have no right to be represented. If they have a right to be represented, they can go and lobby Congress for this and that.
There you go. Right.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, that's absolutely correct. That's an interesting point that you make there. We do talk about taxation, about how corporations, they're taxed too much. Let's bring jobs back. Let's lower the prices. If we lower the taxes, they'll bring more jobs in, and corporations actually grow, and then thus the tax base grows. But my study of history, and one of the things I've done in not only doing the show just because I was raised this way, is also studying history, is some of the corporations and companies actually lobby Congress to, yeah, let's create some regulations, let's create some rules, let's create some laws. And it's not to cripple them, it's to cripple the competition, isn't it, sir?
Oh, absolutely. The one with the most gold gets to have the most favor from government, and it shouldn't be that way. I'm against companies legally lobbying Congress at all, but as long as they're taxed, then they have a legal right to lobby. I would suggest quit taxing them, quit giving them the right to lobby. If they want something, let them go through the American people. Let us be, we are the government. We are the ones that give power to our federal agencies. And so if we would stand up and be the patriots that we're supposed to be, we would refuse the system that's in D.C. right now. It's so far gone and corrupted, especially with the companies that come in and lobby. When you look at the drug industry or the medical industry, it's just. And if we're going to get that out of there, then let's pull the taxes away from the corporations. Tell them they can't go up there and lobby anymore. You want something, you go through the American people. You lobby the American people, and then we'll tell our representatives what we want them to do.
Do you want to say something more?
And isn't that why multi-millionaire Mitt Romney, when running for president, called all corporations all corporations? He said all corporations are individuals.
Oh, absolutely. From a tax point of view,
And
any
if they
corporation
are,
is considered to be an individual or an entity, and they're treated as such.
yeah,
but
but they get more sovereignty than the people, than sovereign American citizens, which we are all supposed to be. Is that true?
Yeah, I would agree with that because listen. How many of you can go and offer a congressman a cushy job when he goes out of office? You see, these corporations can give things to these congressmen and promise things to them if they'll vote their way that the American individual could never do. And so they are subverting our form of government. It's subverting our way of life here in America. And not only that, but it's giving a definite advantage to corporations who have the money to spend to go to Washington and do these things.
That's unbelievable. Now, as the president went on, he talked about going across the nation, proposing his bills, proposing his ideas. I look at this as another. See, I used to do rock shows. I used to be in that business. He's going on tour, isn't he?
Oh, absolutely. He's going to, and he says they're going to be bipartisan. Well,
no, it's the Obama Rock Tour 2015.
Yeah.
Get your tickets.
It's bipartisan rock
Get
tour.
your tickets on, Ticketmaster.
He's looking for more
Yeah.
money to take back to Kenya with him when we actually throw him out of the country when he gets out of office.
Yeah. Well, he paints such a rosy picture of America. I just feel like there's no reason to fight this battle anymore because we're in such great shape. It's crazy, especially when you look at the unemployment numbers and how they changed the calculation of the unemployment numbers. You guys are probably familiar with the U1 through U6 method.
Yep.
And they go off the U3, and the U6 is actually the most accurate because it's including those that have given up trying to find a job because they haven't been successful. And that's right around 11.3%.
Right, and that's just an average. There are some states, I've talked to some people. You've seen some of my stuff. I do the candidate interviews. I've talked to some candidates across the country. I mean, we're looking at like anywhere from 15 to 25% unemployment in some states, and it hasn't changed. Yes, are things improving? Okay, yeah, we've seen the tumbling of gas prices. There's a momentum going on in the United States. But
that's due to the Saudis and the Saudis.
Yeah, but it's
the Iranian and Obama's alliance with the Iranians.
Yeah,
that's
part of the fracking though. Let's get on to the next thing. But the next thing I want to talk about is how, if you watch the speech, every president does this. You and I have gray hair, Mark, and it's like we've seen a million presidential State of the Unions. They always like to tell the individual story. Mr. So-and-so, and then the camera pans and it shows Mr. War Veteran, or it shows Mr. Joe and or Mrs. So-and-so. They struggled hard and they blah, 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 and they go on, and it's like, oh, everybody is like, oh, isn't that so wonderful? But isn't this part, see, I've been watching your Alinsky videos, but isn't this part of this? Just tell that story, that individual story, to help usher in your larger agenda.
Well, part of keeping the serfdom happy is making them think that everything is really good. The price of milk and eggs and everything's just rosy up here. There's nothing more we can do for you people. Things are just great. And sadly, people buy into that and they go back to work and they say, "Isn't it great? Our economy's doing so well," you know. And you have a whole segment of people that can't even get jobs, and they want to work and they can't get jobs. I don't think that the prosperous times that we've had as a country. I remember when I moved to North Carolina once, and I moved there because I was having trouble getting a job, and I looked for the state that had the lowest unemployment, and they had a 2.3 unemployment rate, which is actually below full employment because they got that many people that don't even want to work anyway. so, so, so I get there and I built a business there and I did well. Because I was able to work in that environment. But that's prosperity. I don't see that today. I don't see that going on in the States. Now, there may be a few states that are doing well. When we look at Minnesota, which is where I'm at now, all of a sudden we have to wonder because all of a sudden we've got this $1 billion surplus in the state coffers. And the politicians are just wringing their hand figuring out how to spend it. I guess they keep forgetting where it came from. And,
right.
That it's the people's money.
Yeah, it's our money.
To the people.
It's and he spoke about how there were 11 million new jobs. Now, yeah, you and I might not necessarily be economists. We might not necessarily be quote unquote watching the job market. I used to be a contractor. I'm still a blue collar worker, and right now I'm in sales. The industry I'm working in, I'm not seeing. Oh well, if this thing is supposed to be roaring the way it's supposed to be, where are my sales numbers? Where is that uptick? I know that the gas prices are tumbling, and I know because again, we have gray hair. We have to wait a little while. It'll probably be about maybe summertime when we really start seeing some real. Okay, things are starting to pick up. Things are picking up. But he goes on and says 11 million new jobs. Okay, where? Hello, where?
Well, the reality is they never tell you. They never use the word net.
Ah, it's kind of like your gross pay and then your net pay.
I could tell you, I got $1 million company. We did $1 million in sales. That means nothing to a real accountant because he'll ask you, what was your debt?
Right. How much did it cost? What's your labor?
What were your outlays?
Right.
Now, you might have only made $1 and you were $1 million company. I mean,
right.
So when it comes to the jobs, the real number is close to about 6.5 million net jobs that have been added to the workforce. But what kind of jobs were they? They were lower paying jobs. They were part-time jobs.
Mm-hmm.
When you look at it from the perspective of only full-time jobs, it's not nearly as rosy. So that's what happens in a bad economy. In a bad economy, businesses cut back, and one of the biggest expense for a business is labor costs. And so they find ways to cut back on labor. They go to part-time schedules, and they lay some people off, and they pay less wages. And so then the government comes back and says, see these great numbers? Well, they're not that great.
Go ahead, Wayne.
I took that. I made a comment while we were watching I actually boycotted the SO2 last night, but I watched it with Chris earlier, and when he said 11 million jobs created, I automatically did their Common Core fuzzy math, their Communist Core fuzzy math, and said, Okay, he said 11 million added jobs. That means we lost 22 million jobs.
There's probably more outsourced, don't you think so, Mark?
They're all
Well,
outsourced to
yeah.
China, where
Go ahead.
they're
By
actually
the
working.
way, if you can do Common Core math, you're a genius, buddy.
I have to learn some of it because I got a 10-year-old in a Common Core, New Hampshire school.
Okay,
I've seen that stuff, and it makes absolutely no sense to me.
And
But
it
I'm
doesn't to me
wondering-
either, but.
Actually, if we extrapolate a little here, let's kind of think outside the box. Well, that's probably why they want to introduce Common Core, because hasn't government been fudging numbers for so many years? It's like, why don't we just teach this to the American people?
And then we'll have a country full of useful idiots.
Useful idiots
Get
like
elected,
most
you already have the
yeah.
skill.
Exactly. You'll already have the skill. Oh, that's great, Mark.
And now Obama wants to put it all the way up into junior college.
Here
And
we go.
absolutely
Yeah,
free.
hang on. We'll get to that in a second. Okay, so he goes on and he talks about, number one, we're in oil and gas. But then at the same time, you know, Obama is a huge friend of the solar energy, the
Yeah.
wind energy. I did a great seminar once with the John Birch Society. I spoke about wind technology and how it's a huge farce. But yet at the same time, even though we have fracking, and part of that has helped drive down the cost of gasoline, because, quote unquote, you know, and Wayne disagreed with me, but I said, no, you know, I look at the numbers. We are producing more. We are doing it, but it's all on private land. And that's the
Right.
one caveat that Obama couldn't work himself around. You know, the individual ranchers, the individual people who own huge tracts of land out in the West, they're out there doing that. But wasn't this already in the works? I mean, remember the story about how, oh, well, you know, we need to drill more. Well, if we do it now, you still won't see the benefits from that from 10 years from now. You know what I'm talking about, Mark.
Well,
Yeah, go ahead. You know what I'm talking about, though.
Oh yeah, I do. Weren't we told that we Americans don't understand the oil markets, and we don't understand futures, and we don't understand how it works? Drilling more oil, they told us, would not drive down the price in America. And I said that's a bunch of hooey,
Yeah.
because basic free market economics, surplus, low prices, it works that way. I don't care what the product
It's called Economics 101.
Yeah,
Really.
And I was debating a guy back during the last presidential election on that issue, and he said, "Well, you just don't understand." I said, "Can you tell me what Saudi Arabians pay for a gallon of gas?" And he said, "No." I said, "It's 50 cents a
Yeah,
gallon."
I know. It's insane.
In Venezuela,
So-
it's 11 cents a gallon.
I know. It's crazy down there because they drill their own oil.
And this past year, I saw a report. That the United States has just become the largest producer of natural gas in the world.
Yeah, and supposedly by 2017, we're going to be a net leading exporter of oil. And brings me back to what I just said a second ago about how, oh, well, it'll take 10, 15 years before we see the benefits of that. Here we are, fracking,
Yeah.
producing our own oil. This has only happened in the past couple of years. Listen, folks, here on the Meat and Potato Show, one of the things I do is I do my research and I study the stuff. I watch the documentaries. I read everything that's out there. And I don't know, Mark, you know, Wayne, you know, this fracking thing, well, it's only been about a year, year and a half, 2 years that we've started doing this. Boom! Here we are. Where's
I
that
would
10,
say that-
15 years thing that everyone was talking about?
Well, we're so close right here in Minnesota to North Dakota, and we could hear a large sucking sound in Minnesota of everybody going up there to work, because the economy was so great up there because of this oil find and the fracking that they were doing, and they were saying that we have more oil there than Saudi Arabia ever dreamt of having. And so, I mean, it's a huge, huge boon. And I bet this really irritates our president, because he's been trying to get us down to third world country status ever since he got elected. And then these oil guys come along and undo the stuff that he's trying to do. And there's nothing that'll affect our economy better then low prices for oil and gasoline, that affects everything we buy.
Everything we buy. That's absolutely
Yeah.
correct. And here's the other thing too. I remember back during Carter when he gave the malaise speech. I remember that. I was a young kid. I sat in front of the TV and I watched him. I remember him excuse me. I remember him telling us that we're going to run out of oil in about 30 to 40 years. And here we are in 2015. We're discovering more oil, not only just in the fields that we already have, but because of our technology, because, hello, and Obama was saying this. He says, hello, it's 2015. We have the technology. At the same time, he's speaking out of both sides of his mouth. We have the technology. It's like, okay, the technology has debunked the myth of that we're running out of oil. We're discovering fields all over the planet Earth, aren't we, sir?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. It's everywhere here. And it's an amazing. It's actually I think this is just a blessing that's happened to this country that will help us around despite what our government tries to do to it. And sadly, when we no longer see our government as our ally, as our friend, as someone who's supposed to help us, the voter, the constituent, to have a even playing field where we can go out and we can get jobs, we can start businesses, we can have hope for a future. All I know that government does is to steal those things. They steal dreams and they steal the ideas that people have and keep them from going forward and taking risk because the economy's, they want it where they want it. It's just, they want us to be subservient. They want us to be serfs.
Okay, hang on. Wayne, ask your question. I'm going to move on to some other things.
That's why they stole and took away all of Tesla's research and inventions and hid them away where no one could get at them, and that's also why the way that the natural gas issue, that we could be the number one exporter of natural gas around the world, which is clean burning. We also have clean burning coal, and Obama shut all that down. And then he keeps going down. Let's go down this road where we only have $900 billion to spend on solar and wind power. And then, as Chris has said to me many times in the past, like the wind farm off the Cape in Massachusetts is one lawsuit away from its next lawsuit. And that's the way
crazy.
The government runs everything. Everything is one lawsuit against another lawsuit, and it's the same thing that's happened with the fracking in North Dakota and everywhere else, and Texas and everywhere else.
Yeah, even the Keystone Pipeline, they're trying to stop it. It's lawsuits.
Okay, the EPA jumps in there. The EPA crazies jump in there and say, you can't do that. You're boring under my land, and you live 25 miles down the road from me. Stop whining. We're making money on this, and you don't own the land 25 miles under your property.
Yeah, isn't that part of it though? It's like they just keep throwing up roadblocks. It's just more lawsuits after lawsuits. They're just trying to look for any way. I mean, what drives this leftist, bizarro world attempt? Again, sir, we just came from a Tea Party meeting where we watched that movie, the Rocky Mountain Heist. And it was an attempt from the Democrats to take over the state of Colorado, which was traditionally a red state. But again, even in Colorado, there's huge fracking. There's private landowners who just, it's like, wait a minute. What? I've got oil and gas under my land? I'll screw this cow farming stuff. I'm going to drill for oil. But there's this stuff where they say, oh no, you can't do that. It's just more intrusion, more government, more regulations trying to stop. What fuels this, sir? This denial of Americans doing what Americans do best.
I think it really goes to the Alinsky model of utilitarianism.
Thank you. I wanted to get into that. Thank you. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, and the utilitarian mindset sets up the end goal as a super morality. And what I mean by super morality is it becomes so moral to achieve this end goal that it's okay to break regular morality in order to achieve it. And so what they do is they deceive their own doing the right thing, and they act very arrogant and pompous about their position because they think that it's a super morality, and it's a mind trick, and they can get other people to believe it and come alongside with them. I mean, we see this with global warming ideas. We see this with the environmental issues. I mean, come on, we have the technology, like you said, to do what nobody else can do. I mean, who do you think taught the Saudi Arabians how to extract oil?
We did it.
Sand?
It was a mistake.
And,
I believe it was a mistake.
Yeah, it probably was a mistake in looking at it from here. But what we've got to do is we've got to understand how they think and how they process so that we can interject our appropriate response to it. When you see people like Pelosi, I thought of going into the not growing pigs business like Al Gore did a few years ago because the government were paying farmers not to grow pigs. So, hey, why not buy a farm and not grow pigs? So
you get all the subsidies.
These are the kinds of idiot programs they come up with. But what they're doing, and this is what's dangerous about what they're doing, they're picking winners and they're making losers. And the government was never supposed to be that deeply entrenched into the lives of Americans. We were supposed to be able to start a business. And we were supposed to be able to play on an even playing field where, yes, we have competitors. Yes, they might be bigger, but smaller businesses are leaner. They can do things the big businesses can't. And so it all balances out if the government would just stay out of the way. Now, I realize we need some regulations because some businesses will practice bad things. And so I'm not pro-business to the point of breaking the law or being immoral.
Sure.
They have to abide by the law as well. But when the government gets involved in the industries and says we're going to fund this industry and then we're going to bankrupt that industry through our lawsuits, then it's just a game. And it fits in with the Alinsky model because they're using a utilitarian super morality to achieve what they want to achieve. Look at what they've done to the coal industry. Nearly put that into a state of bankruptcy, and it's really sad.
Well, is it that it's about control, though, isn't it? It's the Alinsky model, but even the government model here in the United States is about control. We have this mentality of, well, government should do something. Government should. Oh yes, we should pass some laws. We should protect this. We should protect that. Okay, the liberal that I was raised to be when I was a young kid, I grew up in a Kennedy household. Okay, I can accept those models. Okay, yeah, we should protect things, protect the environment, protect the workers, protect business, and maybe have a level playing field on that. But now we're at this point where it's like it's just about control. It's just about controlling what you can say, what you can do on your own land. Getting back to the fracking, it's just about control. That's it.
Yeah, the utilitarian mindset that the Democrats have, I call them neo-utilitarians because they only use utilitarian method in order to achieve their real goal. In other words, they're going to tell the American people what they want the American people to see as their goal, but that's not their real goal. Just like, let's take the immigration issue, for instance.
Go ahead.
We have illegal aliens. What are the Democrats espousing? It's immoral to send people back across the border and split families. Well, the conservatives say, well, then don't split the family, send them all back. But what they're doing...
Exactly.
What they're doing is actually creating a end goal for the American people to bite on. But what is really the Democrats' end goal? They're only using the utilitarian method to achieve what they want. What they want is power and control. And they only see the immigration issue as more voters that will vote for
That's
them and keep them
absolutely
in
correct.
power and keep them in control. And that's what it's about with these people.
Go ahead, Wayne.
My assessment of the of what you call the Linsky model is it falls along with my assessment of democracy, socialism, and communism. They're all together the same thing. They're the same thing. There's just lighter versions of one another. And they always fail. Every democracy that's ever been tried on the face of the planet, Greece, Rome, Italy, have all now they're trying. And now they're trying to turn the United States into a socialist democracy like they have in Europe. The European Union is falling apart because it's a socialist democracy. Now, ever since World War II, they've been making they've been nation building and making these socialist democracies all over the planet, and they always fail. They fall into dictatorship because democracy is not a three-class system. It's not an upper class, those uber rich, and the middle class. And the government always talks about the middle class. There is no middle class in the United States anymore. You're either super rich or you're like me. You're poor as a church mouse, and the people like me are the ones that do all the work. And these people are sitting on their butts doing absolutely nothing but writing on a piece of paper and telling interns that don't get paid what to do, and they haven't worked a day in their life, like Elizabeth Warren and Barack Obama. They've lived their whole lives privileged.
Yeah, it's an elitist thing.
It's elitist statism and democracy. It's statism, communism. It's all the same thing. It's all a two-class system where you have the government, rich people, and the poor serfs that you keep referring to as all of us are serfs.
Well, I've always said on my show is that socialism has the longest history of having the shortest history in history.
It's economically untenable as a philosophy. There's no country in the world that can last with that form of government, and you'll never see a country start out with that form of government. You could never start a country on the basis of socialism. It just wouldn't work. Eventually, people get tired of working and having their resources taken away from them and given to people that refuse to work. Pretty soon, they get the idea, well, if they're not going to work, neither am I, and then there goes your GDP, and you go bankrupt as a country. So it can't work. And you're right about democracy. Democracy is it irritates me when I hear people call America a democracy.
I get livid. I get livid.
Democracy is not meant for a nation this size. Democracy only works for very small groups of people. And when you try to apply that into a place where you've got 300 million people, it could never work. So we have a constitutional republic, and our constitutional republic, in it, we still are the boss. The people are the boss, but we have representatives, and we send those representatives to represent us. And the sad thing is when they get to D.C., they seem to forget how they got there and why they were there to begin with. So
I just wrote about that on my Facebook today. I said that the federal government should follow the model of the honorarium pay system with the legislature in the state of New Hampshire, which still, to this day, the state reps get paid $100 per year, and the state senators get paid $400 a year. The governor gets paid a salary, the attorney general gets paid a salary, the justices and the judges get paid salaries, but if you're an elected official in the legislature, your business is your income. your normal everyday business, whether
Right,
you're a
right,
farmer
right.
or a businessman, you have a store or this or that or the other thing. You work your store during the day, and then you go when you're supposed to be in session in Concord, New Hampshire, and you go there and you do your duty as your civic duty as a representative of the people of your district, and then you go home and you only get your honorarium pay.
In fact, in Texas, Governor Rick Perry had said, even during the 2014 election, he had said, you know, our legislators, they only show up once or twice a year, and they decide things, and then they go back home. Isn't that?
Well,
But isn't that what our original founders had even said themselves?
Yes. This is another problem. When we have elected officials that get elected to a $100,000 a year job,
Yeah.
and they come out millionaires, the math just isn't adding up. I think they're doing Common Core with the payroll. But anyways, there's something going on with companies. It's these companies, these industries that are getting involved in speaking engagements and paying them high fees and things like that. And so people are going into government office for the sole purpose of prospering. That's a bad formula
That
right
was
there.
not the intention, was it, sir?
No, it is not. It was not the intention of the founders. The founders didn't set it up that way. And the American people, I think, kind of went to sleep and let it get out of hand.
From my reading of Jefferson, Washington, John Adams, Madison, even Andrew Jackson, one of the things that I took away from all of my reading, and folks, you know, on the Meat and Potato Show, I do a lot of research, is that it was supposed to be an asterisk on your resume. It was supposed to be the last paragraph of your resume. You ran a business, you raised a family, you farmed, you did this, you did that, and the private, you fought in the war, you did that, and then your last 6 years, you served in the Senate, and that was it. And that was it.
Or you went all the way to president.
Or maybe even if you did run president, it was kind of like a star on your forehead. At the end, this is what you did. You're right, Mark.
How is it George Washington died with almost in bankruptcy?
Exactly.
I mean, this isn't the way. I mean, look at the presidents today.
$25,000 a year was the president's salary in
Back in his
1791.
day. Right.
And that went on for the I believe the first 25 years of the presidency.
But anyway, go ahead, Mark. Go ahead.
Years.
Well, I mean, you know, just showing up to go to dinner with them can cost you $5,000 now. This is some of these fundraisers they do. But listen, they have this idea that they're going to prosper, or they're going to be set for life. And government was never about. You weren't supposed to go to government to earn a living. You were supposed to go to government to serve the American people, to protect the freedoms that this country has. Not go there to prosper. You were supposed to prosper in your job, in your business, in your case, but to use government as a means of prosperity. Who winds up paying for that prosperity?
Us.
You and me.
Yeah. Isn't this, again, sir? I've watched videos. Isn't this part of the model, though? It's like, go in, make your money, pass the laws, create a paradigm amongst the American people to believe in some sort of myth. Isn't that part of it?
Well, I'm convinced that the worldview, and you got to look at it from a worldview perspective. What is the worldview, not of an individual, but of the Democrat Party? What's their worldview? When you look at what they try to do, what they try to accomplish, it's socialism. It is absolute socialism. So everything they do is a means to that end. They will use language like, what was it that President Obama said? He was going to, I've got it here in front of me, something about fundamentally, or changing the foundations of our economy. build it on a better foundation. I thought the foundation that our founders gave us was pretty good. Free market economy, that's worked for well over 200 years quite well. We've become a superpower. We've become the most prosperous nation in the world under that system. And now you want to use terms like a foundation. Well, what would that foundation be? Again, it goes back to a socialistic idea. And then he uses terms like that we want everybody to work to help everybody else. Well, that's communism, socialism on its face. It's Marxism.
Sure.
And so if we don't, as Americans, start paying attention, and I think this is part of the problem. Americans have a short attention span when it comes to the government. And I think the reason they have a short attention span is because they attended public school like I did. And we were dumbed down with regard to government. It is the citizen that has to remain vigilant, because you give somebody power and they are likely to abuse that power, and it's the citizens that have to hold their feet to the fire.
Is this one of the reasons why I think that Democrats depend so much on young people? Because,
oh yeah,
okay, Mark, you and I, we were there. We were young. I told you, and my audience knows, I've said it a million times, I was raised in a liberal Kennedy household. I believed in all of that. I was raised on all of that. Now here I am, 51 years old. I have got gray hair, and I've kind of woken up in 6 years. So I have 6 years. So I have that knowledge behind me. Conservatism, ladies and gentlemen of the Meat and Potato Show, conservatism is an organic thing. It comes naturally to you. Yes, you can be raised in that type of a household, just like I was raised in the Kennedy liberal household. I was raised that way, and my friend Wayne was. Eventually, conservatism comes to you organically. It just kind of grows on you, and there's certain things that you go through in life where reality is slapping you upside the head every once in a while, saying, hey, you got to wake up to what's really going on here. But isn't that why Democrats and liberals depend on the young people? And please excuse my French here, but because they're just young and dumb. That's it.
Well, not only that, Chris, but the young people, especially college-age kids, have just gone through 12 years of the most
indoctrination,
sophisticated indoctrination techniques known to man. By the time they get to college, they're thoroughly trained in liberalism with regard to their worldview. So then it becomes easy for these professors to mold their minds, manipulate the way they think, get them to think they're doing the super morality again.
Yeah.
Whatever the cause is, get them behind a particular cause and make that the super morality, and they will go out there and do it. But they eventually wake up because it doesn't work. Now, I was talking to a college kid at the men's store a few months back, and he said, "Boy," he said, "this next election, I am voting all Republican." I said, "Why is that?" He said, "Well, because I tried the other way. It doesn't work. It just doesn't work. I have a college degree, and I'm stuck here in a men's store selling clothes." And so. But you know, there's a danger in that position as well, because people are willing to change sides simply because of their present condition.
Well, Wayne and
I don't vote based on my condition. I vote based on my conviction.
Wayne,
and if we would all vote based on conviction, then it doesn't matter what the situation I'm in. I would be relied upon to vote and according to that conviction, even if it was to my harm.
Wayne and I never went. Wayne and I went in various different points of direction in our lives. But one of the things that we gained from our life experience is we were out there on the streets, and we were out there working our jobs, and we realized, and it wasn't that we were stupid kids or stupid people back in the day.
Oh, I was definitely a stupid little crazy kid.
No, but here's the thing. It's the fact that, see, I come back to my upbringing, is that my mother always taught me, yes, she was a liberal Kennedy, and I was raised that way. But she always told me, you got to work, you got to think for yourself, you got to pay your way, you got to own up to your responsibilities. And as I was growing up through life, and I started my businesses, and I worked, and I paid my taxes. Eventually, as time went on, I realized, yeah, this liberal thing, this isn't what I signed on for. This is going this is going in a different direction because I'm out here in the trenches and I'm out here trying and I'm looking around and I'm seeing every obstacle in my way because of the thing that I was supposed to raised and believe in. And I'm looking at these other guys that I've always been told were they're the ones that are standing in your way. And I thought to myself, but wait a minute, they're not actually standing in my way. They're actually telling me, go, go do something. Go be something. Be yourself. Grow and build and create. And of course, here I am in 2014, just on a shoestring budget. I build a meat and potato show. And that's what I'm talking about. Is here I am at 51. I'm like, wow. It's amazing how I've come through this catharsis, that I've gone this entire journey from being raised. And look, when I first was able to vote, I did. I voted Democrat. As time went on, I realized, wait a minute, this is not the game I signed up for. Things are changing here. And of course, as I built this show and I put my own businesses together, I realized it's up to me. It's up to me. I've got to find my own way. And today, this is why I do the show the way I do it. I have the interviews and I have the guests on. Because if I did it the other way, let's play devil's advocate. Let's say I was still a liberal Democrat. I would just be not only...
We wouldn't be friends anymore.
Actually, Wade and I would not be friends. I wouldn't be talking to you. I'd be kind of carrying the water of the party here. Now, some people will say, well, Mater, you're carrying the water of the conservatives. I'm not doing that, because if anybody has ever watched my show and seen the show, the amounts of guests and the different viewpoints I have here, this is what has helped me to grow as a show and as an announcer, is that I gotta break away from all of that. That is true conservatism. That is, it comes to me organically, doesn't it, sir?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you look at our Declaration of Independence. It is nature and nature's God. When you look at the perspective of any kind of government entity, again, it comes back to a naturalistic worldview. And by that, I do not mean evolution. I mean the way things actually work in the real world.
It's God-given.
People have got to understand that this idea of taking from the rich and giving to the poor has been tried thousands of times and it fails every time. It works for the moment for them to gain power. But in order to maintain that power, they have to get rid of all the people that helped them get into power to start with, because they'll turn on them like a rabid dog. So yes, I believe conservatism is the most natural thing to be, because that's what is, that's what works, that's what our founders. I mean, you read John Locke when he was his two treatises of government. In the first treatise, he deals with the divine right of kings, or the idea of the divine right of kings, and in the second treatise, he deals with the premise of government. And when you look at his ideas and the premises of government, you find that naturally man needs government because other men are not so nice. So they will come and take your stuff forcefully unless you build an army against them.
That's
The purpose of government is the primary purpose of the government is to protect the people, protect their rights, protect their property, protect their freedom. And when government gets away from that as their focus, then it's gotten too powerful, too big, and too dangerous.
And it is. It's quite literally, according to John Locke, it is quite literally just a wall. It's just a barrier. That's all it really is. And that's the only role it should play. is a protection, a barrier, a wall, an institution of laws, but that's it. Other than that, let people do what they do, let the businesses do what they do, let everyone grow, evolve, create the way they're supposed to do. Isn't that correct, sir?
Yes, and if you would look at just the basis of protecting individual rights, if you protect those individual rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that fulfills the role of government right there. Because if a corporation steps on the rights of individuals, the law is there to stop them.
Right.
So this brings me back to another avenue that I just addressed, and that's the idea of hate speech legislation. That's talking about making it illegal to think a certain way. And laws have to be based on what a person does, not what a person thinks.
Wait,
a person has the right to think.
Mark, let me stop you there. Wait a second. I'm thinking here for a second. I think there's an author. His name is George. He wrote a book in 1948. I forget what it's called. Anyway, go on, John. Go on, Mark.
Anyway,
you know where I'm going there, sir.
Anyway, this idea of hate speech. I mean, I've asked my students, and I've asked other people that I've had conversations with. Do you know any crime that was tagged as being hate speech or hate crime that didn't have laws already on the book to arrest that individual and incarcerate them for what they did? And I have not found a single case where that person couldn't be arrested for what they did to the individual. They violated their God-given rights. And that's the only law we need. When you start messing around with the idea of speech being illegal, now you're talking about trumping our Bill of Rights, trumping on free speech amendment, and so it's getting dangerous. The government's getting dangerous when you start playing with these things.
Ladies and gentlemen on the Even Ted Show, I was being very facetious there. That author I was talking about was George Orwell, and the book was 1984. He's talking about, Mark is talking about thought crime.
Mark, you're actually bringing me back to my freshman year of high school, because you sound with your statement about individual liberty, and where I actually learned that my parents were wrong to be staunch Johnson Carter style Democrats that watched JFK die, and if JFK were alive today, he'd be a Republican. So wouldn't Bobby Kennedy. The only socialist in that was the murderer Ted Kennedy. But in any event, to go back to Mr. Sandini, my freshman year American government teacher, which we had at Algonquin Regional High School in Northborough, Mass. I got a B+ in that class, and I literally slept through.
You slept through
that class 4 out of 5 days a week, drooling on my desk. And Mr. Sandini came to me at the end of the year, and I got a B+ for the year. All right, and he said, "You would have gotten A+, and gone very far with this if you had not slept, because you absorbed more sleeping than most of these kids even did listening to me." So you got a B+.
I got an A+ in American government. I was a total geek, Mark.
But I absolutely loved that class.
There's true. I got an A+ in it, and here I am doing the radio show. And again, I was in high school. I was still in that liberal Kennedy, but I was like, oh, government. Oh, let's learn about civics, and I was jazzed on that. But again, once I got out of high school, and I started working for a living and paying my taxes, and I started my contracting business. I was like, wait a minute, something's wrong here.
I went a completely different way. And ended up working as a minimum wage worker, as dishwasher here or
But even
cook there
still,
and all the
you
rest of
had
that
to
stuff.
deal with that.
And what I learned from working all those jobs and sitting there, and I worked for like 6 or 8 months or 10 months or a year, and they'd sit there and go, when I'd sit down to talk about a raise, they'd be like, oh, we expect this much more from you. I'm like, wait a minute, I've been busting my hump for this amount of time. I deserve more than $3.10 an hour for doing all this work and making sure that all you people have the things that you need to serve the people. So it went on to that, and then it was the Reagan years when I was doing that, and I actually started to make a little more money while Reagan was president. All right, and
yeah, that was my best years too, running my business.
And then Reagan was the only president of the 20th century since Woodrow Wilson that actually paid attention to the Militia Act of 1903 with regard to Grenada. When we went in, he set the Marines in joint task force from the Navy, the Marines, the Air Force, and whatnot. Took the American student hostages off of the island of Grenada and said, let the Cuban regulars fight it out with the Grenadians, and told the Democratic Congress that wanted them to send the army in to occupy them to get out. Then I learned, all right, now I want to run with the big dogs, and I want to make the same kind of money that my president Ronald Reagan is making, and I started voting to vote against communist Bill Clinton.
Now that brings me into a great point here, as Wayne went off on a tangent there about Grenada. But anyway, now the president talked about minimum wage, about how people are earning more money now. And when he said that in the speech tonight, or the other night, man, we watched it. I'm sorry, we watched it on YouTube. Is that I thought to myself, yeah, wages are up only because the government ordered companies to raise the minimum wage. There's all that legislation that's going on. People are earning more money now. You can't live on $15,000. It's like, yes, McDonald's is not a, it's a part-time job. It's something that a kid does, or something that somebody does to supplement their income. Look, Mark, you've probably done it too. Look, we have our careers, but I do it. I mean, I work a great career right now, but I'm already thinking, it's like, you know what, I want to make some more money. I'm thinking of punching. One of the things I always do on the side is I always punch a cash register at a convenience store. I've done that for years. There's no shame in that. I just do it to supplement my income. But here I am thinking to myself, yeah, where's my chance of getting that job now that, the minimum wage has been artificially jacked up, hasn't it?
Well, yeah, and that creates several economic problems. Number one of which, you're going to lose jobs. If you raise the minimum wage to 10.10, the CBO records, I think, said that you'll lose 500,000 jobs.
Sure.
And the Democrats say, yeah, but you'll have another million people that will be a living. That just it's senseless. Not only that, but again, you have companies who have to absorb this cost. Mm-hmm. And they either do it by raising the price of their product, or they do it by cutting costs themselves. And the first thing they cut is labor.
Right.
And so at some point you're crossing a curve where raising the minimum wage so high that it's actually damaging to the economy rather than helpful.
And here's the other thing I wrote about in my blog on the Lexington Green is that, okay, you raise the minimum wage. That's great. Okay, great. Oh, we've got more money. Oh, isn't that great? What people don't see, and no one's talking about, but I did, is that now you're in an upper tax bracket. You've gone
Exactly.
above that $10 mark. Now you're in an upper tax bracket. So that supposed raise in wages that you got is now taxed higher. So you're
Yeah.
not going to actually see any benefit from that raise in wages. You're just
Yeah,
paying more in
it's a
taxes.
trick.
I just picked up a part-time job just before Christmas, a week or two before Christmas. All right, because I'm disabled and I need to supplement my income so I could get a bank account and get a car. Okay, and I made them ignore the fact that Massachusetts wants to raise the price, raise the minimum wage to
Oh,
10
so
10
you
an
took
hour.
the lower wage.
I am getting paid $9 an hour.
Yeah, you took the lower wage.
Because on my and I actually had to call the bankroll department and tell them you can't take out single no dependents. All right. First off, I have a child in New Hampshire that the Massachusetts Department of Revenue has nothing to do with. But then again, if you pay me 10 an hour, all right, for this job, they're gonna put me in another tax bracket, and I'm exempt because I'm disabled.
Yeah, you lose. That's
So
the thing,
I'm
though.
gonna lose one way or another. So you're gonna pay me $9 an hour, and I'm not working more than 23 hours a week.
And there's the thing.
Yeah.
It almost forces the American worker to have to trick the system itself, isn't it, sir?
Well, sure, you become you become a in servitude to the government. They are now crafting your life for you. They are telling you what you can accomplish and what you can't accomplish. One of the things about welfare in any form is that it's always been designed to keep people there,
Yeah.
rather than
Exactly.
helping them get out of that position for good. I mean, as soon as you make over a certain amount, then you got to start paying for health care now. Do you understand what that does to our economy and to the workers? If they get a subsidy for their health care insurance payments as long as they don't make a certain amount of money.
Nobody's
And
gonna
by the
want
way,
to.
if you get to that point where you make a certain amount of money, the cost of insurance robs you of all that money anyway. So
Right.
people say, well, what's the use? I'm working for nothing. That's what socialism does to a people. It causes them to be in serfdom.
That's
Again,
the way I saw this. That's the way I saw the raise in the minimum wage. And I taught when Chris and I were all collecting signatures for the automatic gas tax. I actually had that conversation with a few people, with a few college kids that said, "Oh, well, Obama's going to raise the minimum wage," and I looked at it and I said, "Oh, that's really going to be a good thing because the government is going to put you in a higher tax bracket, and they're going to take all that money
Right.
that you're now
Right.
earning back in taxes. Oh, but I'll get it all back at the end of the year." And I'm like, "No, you won't.
You'll
You're in
only
a
get a
different
fraction."
tax bracket.
Yeah.
You're going to get a fraction of that money back.
Yeah.
You're not going to get even what you're getting back now. So if you stay in a lower tax bracket by making a lower wage while you're working your way through college to get a degree and get a better job that pays you $50,000 or $60,000 a year, then you can turn around and start paying back your college
Well,
loans
it's
and
like-
stuff. Then you have some idea of how economics is really working. But if you sit there and listen to these socialists telling you you deserve $15 an hour to serve French fries at McDonald's, you're crazy. You're just out of your mind. You just lost it. You're dealing with Common Core fuzzy math again. And I'm sorry, but you need to go to the optometrist and get some glasses because you're not seeing the chalkboard correctly when the math teacher's doing the math.
Ladies
Well,
and gentlemen.
also, this keeps people in a place of not wanting to better themselves. One of the great things about a level playing field is that it generates the motivation and the energy for people to better themselves, to whether it's go to college or whether it's to start a business and build that business by the sweat of your brow. What the government's doing is taking away the advantage of the level playing field so that nobody wants to to take risk anymore. What's the use? What's the payout? The rich don't want to take risks because now their property is being confiscated. And so if the rich don't take risk, where are the new jobs going to come from? It's a slippery slope, and it continues to get further down that spiral the deeper you get into a socialist worldview.
Ladies and gentlemen, I gotta take a station break real quick. The Meat and Potato Show, conservative talk and awesome broadcasting here live on Northern Lights Radio Network. So Mark, he moved on, of course. The great Messiah, standing behind the podium. He moved on let's get into some international affairs about Iran, the bomb, supposedly
He says we're not going to let them get the bomb.
Yeah, but it's just more talk. We all know Iran's gonna, we all know they're gonna get it. They're eventually going to use it. The whole premise of Islam is to destroy the West, create a world caliphate. I know the president was trying to just say the words, placate Americans, and just try to somehow assuage us of, oh, don't worry about that. Meanwhile, the Israelis are preparing for it. They know what's happening. Saudis know it. Other countries in the Middle East know it. Even Turkey knows it. We know what's going to happen. I would like your opinions on this, sir.
Well, I think, you got to look at what a person does, not what they say. We measure people by what they do, and the true character of a person is based on what they do. So the question then becomes, what has he done to stop them from developing a nuclear weapon? Basically, and I think the funniest comment in that speech was when he talked about anti-Semitism.
Oh my God, I agree.
Are you kidding me? You're one of the biggest anti-Semites out there, Mr. Obama. Every time Benjamin Netanyahu comes to the White House, he has to eat supper alone because you won't even eat supper with him. So, I mean, it's amazing how he treats the Prime Minister of Israel, and the press won't call him on it. We don't get to hear it. We only hear it from the third arm of the press, which is the internet. And sadly, this guy is just, he's full of hot air. He wants people to believe a particular story, and so he uses language to shroud so that he can come back and say, oh, I really didn't mean that. I meant this. And he does that very professionally. It's an amazing thing to watch, actually. That's the one thing he's really good at.
You know what? I completely agree with you. I do a show, and one of the things I do is media, and I that's one of the things. My friend Wayne, when we were watching it, he was pointing at the screen, yelling. He's one of those old-fashioned Americans. He yells at the television. But I'm watching it. I'm watching the showmanship. I'm watching the camera angles. I'm watching the way it's being fed to us. You're absolutely 100% correct, Mark. It's the way it's being fed to us. The words, the way he pauses in his speech, the way he talks to the audience and they applaud and sit down, and then he brings in his next sentence. It's really choreographed, isn't it, Mark?
It's art. It's art in motion.
Political theater. It's political theater.
This guy is... when you look at the words, every time the press tries to call him on something, he says, well, go back and look at what I said. That's not... He actually has his speeches worded so that they can have more than one definition, so that he can always fall back on a different definition if need be.
Who in history can you say did that too?
Well, he fundamentally wants to change this country. Well, if people try to call him on it, well, that's not what I meant. I meant this. So he always parses his words. Bill Clinton parses the words, uses terms that could mean more than one thing, structures the sentences in such a way that could mean something else if you actually call him on it. And this is the weasel's way of getting away with the things he gets away with. And it's continuous, and it's destructive, because look, we've got a country that is full of patriots and full of freedom-loving people. and I'm heartened in the fact that some people are waking up to what's going on with their country, but it's not enough. We still need more people to wake up, and that's why these kinds of shows are important, and it's to get people to understand that their government today, right now, is not their friend. And I'm not just talking about this administration. If you look at the Congress critters that are there right now, that only have a 3% rating, a favorability rating, they're a bunch of scoundrels, and I'm talking both sides of the aisle here. We need people that have a right worldview to go back into Congress, to get elected, and to bring this government back under control, to be in a place where we the people are empowered again, and that we have the freedoms that we had when we started this country many years ago.
Excellent. Sir, a couple of other points just to wrap up. We're getting quarter past the hour. Let's wrap this up about half past the hour. I want to thank you again for just coming on the show. But he talked about, again, that worn out adage. Oh my God, I almost wanted to throw up the global warming thing.
Oh.
He talked about it being the warmest year on history. Sir, where are you calling in from? What state again?
Minnesota.
Yeah, you're in Minnesota. Okay, go outside right now and somebody tell me what temperature it is right now. We're here in Massachusetts. It's freaking freezing out. Hello,
It's nothing
America.
compared to the 21 below it is where he is.
I know, exactly. It's like, where is this global warming he's talking about? I read a report last year that in the John Birch Society magazine, I get the New American magazine from John Birch Society, and they were talking about the myth of global warming. You remember the freighter that went down there to study the Antarctic, and they got stuck in the ice, and they had to get hauled out of the... We were going down to study global warming, but they got stuck in the ice.
They got stuck.
This is the thing. And I'm looking at what's going on. Again, Mark, you and I are gray-haired old men. It's like it's freezing cold. You and I remember we had some warm winters. That's just the nature of what goes on. But right now, we're freezing. We've had several winters here over the past few years, record snow amounts. Ice is growing all over the place in the north and south, and what the hell? And I was reading a report about these islands, the Seychelles Islands, some of the other island nations. It's like, oh, they'll be underwater, and we have all these refugees. I was reading a report in that John Birch magazine that these populations have actually increased. Why have they increased? They did polls. They took polls. Why did you move here? It's because, well, I lived up in Europe, and it's warm down here, and I want to be here. It's like, okay, so it's freezing cold, and you move down here. So wait a minute. I thought we were warming up. Do you see the oxymoron I'm going on here with Mark?
Well, you probably remember that we were told, I think it was back in the late 60s, early 70s, that we might be entering another ice age.
Yep.
Because it's so cold.
Right.
Yep. The new ice age. I remember that when I was a kid.
Warming. The rising oceans is the one that I just love to deal with, because so many people are afraid if all that ice melts, the oceans are going to rise. And I tell them, displacement. Put some ice in a glass of water and let it melt. Your water isn't going to rise that much, or it's not going to go over the rim of the glass. The whole idea of, they're just trying to scare people. Again, create a crisis, a Linsky model. If you don't have a crisis, create the perception of a crisis to get people to do what you actually want them to do. And that's what you see going on here. This whole global warming thing was meant to do just that. Create the crisis so that you can get done what you want to get done, which has nothing to do with saving the world. It has to do with gaining power and maintaining your control and grip on it.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mark Shaw, Meat and Potato Show, Conservative Talk, and Awesome Rock. Mark, thank you again, always, sir. Open invitation. We're going to get you back on the show. What a great conversation. I thank you so much, sir. Give my audience your websites, your information. Go ahead, sir.
Sure. Well, you can go to collegiumbibleinstitute.com, and that's spelled Collegium. On YouTube, you can go. You can just type in "Restoring America Together Network," and that'll bring you to our Alinsky series. And I'm almost done with the Alinsky series. I've got just 2 more videos to do, and I'll be finished with that. And then I'm moving on to another subject. And so you can go to our Tea Party Conservatives for Freedom, which is our internet group. We're about 23,000 members now. So I happen to be the national director of that. So we're working constantly to inform people and get people up to speed with regard to their government.
Mark, thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, Mark,
thank you
for putting
for
up
having
with my tangents too, because I do tend to go off.
He tends
go
to
off
rant.
onto my rant, but I think if you go on the Meat and Potatoes Show page, you'll find some of them extremely amusing. But I use a lot of facts in it, and when I do my research, I do it in a manner of hindsight. All right, I look back on history and then find the culprits of things like 9/11 that happened. All right, they blamed it on George Bush, but who was president for 8 years before George Bush and ended up having the CIA train the Saudi pilots that pulled the whole thing off.
And that'll be an interview for another show. Mark, thank you so much for coming on to the show, sir.
All right. God bless. Thank
All right.
you.
God bless.
You too.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Well, there you go, folks. Meat and Potato Show, conservative talk and awesome rock. Mark Shaw came onto the show. And we're going to move on to the next segment of the show, which is the entertainment part.